The lumberjack who saved the Zulu beauty, but lost his heart in return. Snow fell in slow, fat flakes that muffled the world to a hush. The river below the ridge moved dark and heavy, its edges rimmed with new ice. Above it, on a narrow logging road carved from frozen mud, a team of horses stood steaming in the cold. Their breath hung in white bursts, reins creaking, harness leather ticking quietly as they shifted weight. Caleb North stood at the lead horse's head, mittened hand on the bridle strap. His beard held tiny beads of ice. His coat, patched wool and canvas, carried the smell of pitch, smoke, and sweat ground deep into the fibers. He listened, head tilted, to something beneath the wind there. Not the groan of the forest, not the distant thud of some tree giving up and falling. A different sound, thin and broken, carried in gusts between the trunks. A voice. He turned his head toward the sound and narrowed his eyes. The spruce rose black and straight, their shoulders heavy with snow, the underbrush a tangle of dead ferns and frozen brambles. The sky, low and gray, pressed everything down. "Hold steady," he murmured to the horses, patting the big gelding's neck. The animal tossed its head once, then settled, trusting the familiar voice. Again the sound came. Closer this time. A cry and then a word he could not place, sharp and clipped. Not any language he knew. Caleb's jaw tightened. Out here, voices that shouldn't be meant trouble. Men from other camps, trappers, drifters, desperation. Desperation made people dangerous. He glanced at the sled loaded with cut logs, the chains drawn tight over the load. The road down to camp twisted alongside the ravine, narrow and treacherous with new ice. He should keep moving. Daylight was already sinking behind the black line of trees. The cry came again, this time higher, edged with panic. Not a man's voice. A woman's. Caleb swore under his breath, a quiet sound lost in the wind. The road, the load, the foreman's temper, the dwindling light, every piece of his life pointed in one direction. But he found his boots turning in another. He wrapped the reins around a sapling, crooned something low to the team, and stepped off the road into the trees. Snow came up past his ankles, crunching under his weight. His breath cut in his chest like knives. The sound drew him forward, down the slope toward the river, where rocks lay hidden beneath. The snow in the ground fell away sharply. He saw her first as a dark knot against all that white. At the base of a tangle of scrub pine, half sliding toward the icy river, a figure lay twisted. A length of rope trailed from one wrist like a dead snake, its frayed end buried in snow. She turned her head as he approached, and he saw her eyes. They were wide, glossy with pain and cold, but steady, not wild. Her skin was dark, richer than any he had seen this far north, and her hair was bound close, streaked with ice. Her clothes were wrong for the forest wool skirt torn, blouse thin and ripped, boots too light for this place. He dropped to one knee beside her, boots slipping on the slope. "Easy," he said, though he knew she might not understand. His voice came out rough. "You're all right. I've got you." She flinched at his touch, a quick, animal recoil, then froze as the movement sent a sharp stab of pain through her leg. Her hand, the one not bound to the rope, clutched at the snow. "Don't," she rasped. Her accent rolled the word differently, but he caught the meaning. Her breath shuddered. "Leave." Caleb looked down. Her right leg was trapped beneath a fallen limb, snapped from some tree above. The wood pinned her awkwardly. Boot twisted at a sick angle. Blood seeped dark and slow into the snow, already starting to crust at the edges. "Can't leave you," he said. "Won't." He slid his shoulder beneath the limb, dug his boots in, and heaved. The trunk shifted with a crack of frozen bark, sent a rush of loose snow sliding toward the river. He grunted, muscles straining, then managed to shove it aside enough to free her leg. She cried out, A sound torn from somewhere deep and bit it off halfway. Teeth clenched. Caleb dropped a limb and crouched beside her again, chest heaving. He peeled off his mitten and touched her ankle lightly. She jerked, hissed air, and squeezed her eyes shut. Broken, he muttered to himself. Maybe worse. She opened her eyes again and stared at him. Who are you? She asked slowly, shaping the words with care. Her voice shook, but there was iron under it. Caleb, he said. Caleb North. Logging camp's a mile that way. He jerked his chin toward the ridge. Gotta get you up there, or you'll freeze. She swallowed. Her lips were cracked, a bright line of blood showing where the skin had split. I am Nandi, she said. The name fell soft and strong between them. Her gaze flicked to the rope still looped around her wrist. They left. I fell. The river. She looked down toward the dark water. Too far to reach me. So they left. Caleb followed her eyes to the rope. He could see it now, trailing up the slope, snagging on roots and stones, ending at a broken loop. She had been tethered like cargo. He didn't ask who they were. He could guess. Some trader hauling labor north. Some man with contracts in his pocket and hunger in his eyes, who decided a broken woman was worth less than his own skin. Caleb pulled his knife and sliced the rope clean. The fibers sprang apart with a soft hiss. You're not tied to anyone now, he said quietly. We go my way from here. She watched the rope fall, and something passed over her face sharp, quick, like the shadow of a bird's wing. Then she nodded once, as if they had struck some kind of bargain. He layered 2 spruce branches together, lashed them with the cut rope, and wrapped his coat around their makeshift sled. Every movement sent a dull ache through his shoulders, old injuries complaining from years in the woods. When he slid his arms under her and lifted her onto the branches, her body was light but rigid with pain. She clutched his shirt once, fingers digging through the wool. Do not drop me, she whispered. Not planning to, he said. He hauled her up the slope, boots slipping, breath burning, muscles screaming. Snow fought them, grabbing at the crude sled, dragging it back. His world narrowed to the crunch of steps, the rasp of his own breathing. The soft gasps she couldn't quite smother dotted the road. The horses shied at the sight of the bundled figure. Caleb soothed them with a rough hand and tied the sled behind the loaded logs, checking every knot twice. He wrapped a spare blanket around Nandi, tucking it tight. You'll feel every stone, he warned. Best I can do. She gave him a quick, fierce look. I am out glass, she said. Take me where there is fire. He almost smiled at that. Fire we've got. The descent to camp was treacherous, even on a good day. Today the ruts in the road held fresh ice beneath the new snow. The runners shrieked softly as they slid, and more than once the back end of the sled tried to swing wide and drag the horses with it. Caleb leaned his weight into the drag pole, boots braced, shoulders locked. Snow spattered his face. His legs burned. Behind him, Nandi's teeth clicked with every jolt, but she made no sound. When the first orange flicker of campfires showed between the trees, relief worked through him like thaw. The logging camp sat in a rough bowl of land, ringed by dark forest, the river curving along one side. Sheds, bunkhouses, a cookhouse spilling greasy smoke. And the long, low shape of the equipment shed huddled close. Together like animals sharing warmth. Voices drifted up the ropemen shouting, laughing, the hollow echo of hammers on frozen wood. The smell of stew and boiled coffee reached them, thick and sour and oddly comforting. As he drove the team into the yard, heads turned. Men stepped back from the path, eyes narrowing at the sight of the extra burden dragging behind the log load. North, someone called. What have you got there? A broken stump? Laughter followed, quick and sharp. Then they saw her face. The laughter faltered, thinned, died outright. In its place rose a low mutter, like wind in dead grass. Caleb ignored it. He swung down, muscles trembling, and went straight to the sled. He peeled back the blanket enough to see Nandy's eyes, dull now with pain and exhaustion. Her lips barely moved. "Fire," she whispered again. He nodded and lifted her carefully, feeling the fragile heat of her through the layers of wool and canvas. She laid her head against his shoulder, whether by choice or weakness he could not tell. Her hair smelled faintly of smoke and something else he could not name, a spice not born of pine or lard or river mud. "North," a voice snapped. He turned to find Anders, the camp foreman, striding toward them. The man's face was windburned and pinched, his eyes pale and cold as river ice. He wore authority-like armor. "What in God's name is this?" Anders demanded, stopping a few feet away. His gaze flicked from Caleb to the woman and back again. "We got no room for strays." Caleb held Nandi a little tighter without thinking. "Found her by the South Ravine," he said. "Legs bad. She freeze out there." "Not our concern," Anders said. "These camps feed who swings an axe. That's the bargain." "She was roped," Caleb said quietly. "Someone was hauling her like freight. They left her to die." Anders' jaw worked. For a heartbeat, something like unease flickered in his eyes. "Traitors," he muttered. "Always running something they can't name." "Not my business." "Not yours either." "It is now," Caleb said. "I brought her in." Around them, men watched, hands idle, eyes bright with the hunger that came when something different broke the sameness of work and cold. Some looked curious, some wary, a few openly hostile. The world had taught them to fear what they did not understand. The forest had taught them that anything unknown could be a threat. Nandi lifted her head a fraction. Her gaze found Anders and held there. "I will work," she said, each word careful. "Not axe. But I can cook, sew, carry. I am not here to sleep and eat only." Anders looked surprised to hear clear English in that voice. In that mouth he had already decided came from somewhere beneath his understanding. He hesitated. Caleb saw the hesitation and moved into it. "Let her stay in the bunkhouse loft," he said. "She won't be in the way. I'll see to her in my off hours. You don't lose nothing. You planning on nursing her for free?" Anders asked sharply. Caleb's mouth thinned. "I'll swing extra hours on the skid road till the snow packs. Make up whatever you think she costs." Murmurs stirred among the men at that. Extra hours meant more strain, more risk on treacherous paths. But Caleb had always taken on what the others wouldn't. The forest had carved him lean and hard, but it had not yet hollowed him out completely. Anders studied him, then spat into the snow. "Fine," he said grudgingly. "She eats what the men eat, nothing more. She earns when that leg mends. Any trouble, she's out on the road again, broken ankle or not." Nandi's fingers tightened slightly in Caleb's coat at that, then loosened. She said nothing. Caleb nodded once. "Good enough." He carried her toward the bunkhouse, the weight of 100 eyes pressing between his shoulder blades. Inside, warmth hit him like a physical blow-thick, smoky, heavy with the smells of wet wool, unwashed bodies, and drying gloves hung over the big iron stove. The noise dropped when he stepped through the door. He climbed the short ladder to the loft, careful with each step. The boards creaked under his weight. Up here, low rafters crisscrossed overhead, and the air felt tighter. He eased her down onto a narrow space near the far wall. Where the heat pool dot, she let out a breath that sounded almost like a sob and turned her face toward the wall. He arranged his coat over her and stepped back, feeling oddly uncertain. "I'll get the sawbones," he said roughly. Her eyes were closed, but she nodded once. He descended the ladder, shoulders hunched, and stepped back into the cold evening light. Men still watched from the doorway, from the shadows between buildings. A few looked at him as if he had brought trouble in wrapped in his own arms. Caleb set his jaw and strode toward the small shack. where the camp doctor kept his meager supplies. Behind him, smoke from the cookhouse wove into the darkening sky, carrying with it the smell of burning fat and boiled beans. The forest pressed close around the camp, silent and watchful, as if waiting to see what would be made of this new breach in the old. Hard order of things. The camp doctor was not a real doctor, and everyone knew it. He had once been a barber in a town 3 days' ride south, had cut hair and pulled teeth until the mines closed and the men scattered like startled birds. Now he stitched wounds and set bones for loggers who could not afford the luxury of hospitals. He answered Caleb's knock with a grunt, opening the door just enough to let out a gust of warm, bitter air. Behind him, shelves lined with bottles shook slightly as the wind pushed at the walls. "What is it, North?" he asked. His beard was gray and uneven, his eyes small but sharp. "Fingers gone? Axe bite? Tell me, it's not another lung gone sour. I'm short on laudanum." "Woman," Caleb said, cutting through the words. "Broken leg, bad. I've got her up in the loft." The man's eyebrows climbed. "A woman," he repeated flatly. "In my experience, they don't tend to grow on trees out here." "Where'd she fall from? The sky?" "Traders left her in the ravine," Caleb said. "Can you look at her or not?" "Don't snap at me, boy," the man said mildly. He pulled a coat from a hook, shrugged into it. "They call me Finch, if she's asking. And if that leg's beyond saving, it's God's fault, not mine." They walked back through the yard together, past men who pretended not to stare. The snow had thickened, flakes slanting sideways now, driven by a hotter wind. Lanterns swung on hooks between buildings, their light smearing across the white ground in the bunkhouse. The air hit thick and close again. Finch squinted toward the loft, grunted, and started up the ladder with more agility than his age suggested. Caleb followed, his shoulders filling the narrow space. Nandy lay where he had left her, eyes half open, skin slick with a fine sheen of sweat in spite of the cold. His coat was drawn up to her chin. Her hands clutched the fabric lightly, as if she feared it might vanish. Finch knelt beside her, joints cracking. He offered a brief nod that might have been meant as courtesy. "You understand me, girl?" he asked. "I'm going to look at that leg. It won't be pleasant." "I understand," she whispered. Her voice came thin but steady. "I have had worse than hands on my leg." Finch's gaze sharpened fractionally at that, then slid away. He pulled back the coat, revealing the twisted boot and the swelling pushing against the leather. Caleb watched Nandy's jaw tighten. "North," Finch said. "Hold her shoulders. She's going to move." Caleb dropped to one knee behind her, placing his big hands gently but firmly near her collarbones. The bones under his palms felt delicate, bird-like under the padding of muscle. Finch took a knife from his belt and sliced the boot open from heel to toe. The sound of splitting leather rasped loud in the still air. He peeled it back, layer by layer, revealing a foot already turning an ugly mottled color. Nandy sucked in a breath. Her eyes found Caleb's, locking there like an anchor. Finch probed carefully, fingers pressing along the bone. He muttered under his breath, a series of soft curses and observations. "Clean break," he said finally. "Right through. Could be worse. Could be shattered. She's lucky in her misfortune. Or stubborn." Nandi let out a humorless puff of air that might have once been a laugh. "Not lucky," she said. "Just too angry to die where they dropped me." "That'll do as well," Finch said. He reached into his coat and withdrew a roll of splinting boards and cloth strips. "North, keep her still. She tries to kick. You make sure she doesn't." Caleb's hands tightened a little. Nandi's fingers twitched, then settled, as if she had decided to trust the weight behind her. Finch straightened the leg with one swift, practiced movement. The sound that tore from Nandi's throat was raw and low, not a scream but a broken roar forced through clenched teeth. Her body arched, driving her shoulder blades into Caleb's palms. He held, absorbing the strain. feeling each tremor pass through her. "Easy," he murmured near her ear. "Easy, Nandi. It'll settle." She shook, breath hitching, then sagged back against him. When Finch began to bind the leg, her gaze stayed fixed on the ceiling beams, lips moving silently in words he did not know. "There," Finch said at last, tying off the last knot. The splint encased her calf and ankle in stiff lines of wood and cloth. "Keep it still. No wait on for weeks, maybe more. She's young enough. It might menstruate." Nandi swallowed. "Will I walk?" she asked. Her voice had that small crack of fear people tried to hide. Finch tilted his head. "Most likely," he said. "You won't be dancing for a spell, but you'll walk again if you mind me." She nodded once, absorbing that like another blow. Then she turned slightly toward Caleb, the motion almost imperceptible. "Thank you," she whispered. He shifted back, suddenly aware of his hands still resting near her shoulders. He withdrew them carefully and stood. "You rest," he said. "You don't owe me words yet." Finch rose, joints popping again. He clambered down the ladder, and Caleb followed. At the bottom, the older man leaned against a bunk post, catching his breath. "You taking responsibility for her, then?" Finch asked quietly. His voice had lost its earlier rough sarcasm. "This isn't a stray dog you brought in, North. She's going to draw eyes. And questions." Caleb rubbed at the stiffness gathering between his shoulders. "They already have eyes," he said. "Let them use them. I won't leave her to the snow." Finch watched him for a long moment. "The world's hard enough on men who get attached to things," he said. "Harder still if those things don't fit where they're dropped. You understand me?" "I understand," Caleb said. Understanding did nothing to change the knot in his chest. But he understood. Finch nodded, apparently satisfied. "I'll bring her willow bark for the pain," he said. "And some cloth that's seen cleaner days. Try to keep that leg dry. If it starts to smell sweet or turn dark, you come find me. I don't care if it's midnight." He left with that, stepping out into the snow, door thudding closed behind him. The bunkhouse slowly filled with noise again. Men spoke in low tones, some speculating, some complaining. Cards slapped on planks. Boots thumped. On the stove, a kettle shrieked softly as steam forced its way out. Caleb climbed back to the loft once more. Nandi lay with her eyes open, staring at nothing. He lowered himself to sit on the boards near her, back against the cold outer wall. "It will heal," she said, without looking at him. "You heard our doctor," he replied. "He's a grim old bastard, but he knows bones." She turned her head then, slowly. "You did not have to bring me here," she said. "Many men would walk away, or take what they want and then walk. Many men are fools," he said. He rubbed his palms against his trousers, feeling suddenly clumsy. "It was you or the crows. Didn't seem like much of a choice." "There's always a choice," she said softly, "even when people pretend there is not. I have seen men choose to let others die because it is easier for them." Caleb thought of her wrist, etched with the rope's burn. He had no argument. "Where are you from?" he asked after a moment. "You speak well enough." "Not from the settlements around here." She hesitated. Her gaze drifted toward the far beams, where smoke from the stove below wove in thin threads. "Far," she said. "Far beyond ice and these tall black trees. A place where the air is hot and the ground is red. They brought me north from there. Many days on water. Then more days in cold towns. Then I was here." Her fingers brushed the splint lightly, as if testing what was real. "What for?" he asked quietly. Even as he said it, he knew the answer carried weight like a felled tree. "For work," she said. "A man with papers told me I would have work and food." He did not say the work was to follow his orders only. to be traded between men like a piece of cloth. Her jaw tightened. I bit him once. He did not like that, but I still have my teeth. A small, faint smile tugged at one corner of her mouth. It faded quickly, but it was there. Caleb felt something twist inside him. Anger, pity, admiration, all bound into a knot he could not easily separate. "You're not a piece of cloth," he said. "Not here." She studied him, eyes dark and searching. "Then, what am I here?" she asked. "Broken stranger? Problem?" "Woman who needs rest," he said. "And later, when you're ready, work. Real work. For real pay, if I can talk Anders into it. Until then, you're someone staying alive in my loft." A breath of air left her then. Something like relief, but not quite. "You take May people into your loft?" she asked. "First time," he said. "Not much of a host." She made another faint, almost smile. "Then you are learning," she murmured. Her eyes closed. He stayed there even after her breathing deepened, watching the rise and fall of her chest. Outside, the wind roared against the roof, driving snow against the shingles in hard sheets. The forest creaked in response, wood rubbing on wood like bones grinding in an old man's jaw below. Men argued over a card game, their voices blurring into a constant murmur. Someone began to hum a rough song, low and tuneless. The stove clanged as it was fed another log. Caleb sat with his back to the wall until the boards under him numbed his flesh. Then he stood, pulled his coat a little tighter around Nandy, and climbed down to his own bunk. Sleep did not come easily. When it did, it was full of images. He did not want rope dragging through snow, dark water, her eyes meeting his in the white silence. The next morning broke clear and viciously cold. The storm had spent itself overnight, leaving the sky hard and blue. Sunlight caught on the crusted snow, blinding on open stretches of road. The men shuffled into their boots and coats, cursing as frozen leather resisted their efforts. Steam rose from their mouths in thick plumes as they gulped down coffee and bread in the cookhouse. Bodies pressed close in the narrow space. Caleb ate little. His mind kept drifting to the loft. He pictured her there, alone, leg throbbing, surrounded by unfamiliar smells and sounds. "You staring holes in the table, North." A voice jolted him back. Eli, a younger man with straw-colored hair and a constant nervous energy, dropped onto the bench opposite him. "You planning on taking root right there?" "Just thinking," Caleb said, reaching for his tin mug. "About the woman," Eli said bluntly. He tore off a chunk of bread, chewed, eyes bright. "Whole camp's buzzing. Where'd she come from? What's she doing here? You planning on marrying her or just saving her?" Caleb's hand tightened around the mug handle. "Eat your bread," he said. His tone was flat, but something in it made Eli's grin falter. "I didn't mean nothing," Eli muttered. "Just talk. Men get bored, they talk." He swallowed the last of his bread and stood. "Road crew leaves in 5. Anders wants that south run cleared by sundown." Caleb finished his coffee, the bitter liquid doing little to clear the heaviness in his chest. He stopped at the bunkhouse on his way to the yard, climbing the ladder just far enough to see into the loft. Nandi lay awake, eyes on the ceiling. She turned her head at the sound of his boots. "You did not run away in the night," she said. There was a dry edge to her tone. "Thought about it," he said. "Nowhere to run. Trees get in the way." "Trees can be your friends," she said. "In my home, we had trees too, but not like these. They were smaller, wide. The air around them was full of buzzing life. Here it is quiet. Too quiet." "You'll get used to it," he said. Her gaze stayed on him, measuring. "I do not want to get used to being cold and far from home," she said simply. "But I will get used to what I must." He nodded. "There's water and a bit of bread near your head," he said. Finch will come by later. I'll look in on you when the light goes. You go to cut the great trees, she said. I go to drag them, he replied. Others cut. I haul. It's all the same in the end. Trees fall. Men sweat. She watched him a heartbeat longer. Come back in one piece, she said. It wasn't quite an order, but it wasn't a request either. He climbed down with those words lodged somewhere in his chest. In the yard, the world shrank to familiar motions harness leather between his fingers. The smell of horses, the hiss of sled runners on frozen ground. All day, he worked the skid road, coaxing teams and loads down steep, treacherous trails. The sharp calls and curses of men echoed between the trees. Axes rang, their impact carrying in the cold air like distant gunshots. Every so often, his thoughts slipped, drifting back to the loft. Then he snapped them forward again. Thinking about anything too far away got men hurt at midday, while men crouched behind stacks of logs to eat frozen bread and salt pork. Anders rode by on a small, tough horse. He pulled up near Caleb, the animal's breath fogging around its muzzle. She's still alive? Anders asked without preamble. Breathing, Caleb said. Legs set. Finch seems hopeful. Finch seems hopeful about his cards, too, and I've seen him lose half a month's wages, Anders said dryly. His gaze slid toward the distant line of camp roofs. You keep her out of trouble. She's flat on her back with a broken leg, Caleb said. Hard to go far. You'd be surprised what trouble can do when it's lying still, Anders muttered. He dug his heels into the horse's flanks and moved on. The day ground on. By the time the sky began to bruise into purple and gold, Caleb's hands ached and his shoulders felt as if someone had driven wedges into them. He led the last empty team back to camp as the first cookhouse bell clanged for supper. Inside the bunkhouse, warmth hit him again, along with the familiar smells. He climbed the ladder before even removing his coat. Nandi had propped herself on one elbow, face turned toward the narrow loft window. Through it, a strip of darkening sky showed between roof lines and treetops. You came back, she said. Mostly, he said. He dropped to sit near her, stretching his legs out. Any trouble? Many footsteps below, she said. Man talking. Some of them spoke of me. They think I do not understand, because I am not from here. What did they say? He already knew, in a way. Men were predictable. She shrugged one shoulder carefully. Some say you are foolish to bring me. Some say I am dangerous, because I am different. Some say I am pretty, and that makes you foolish twice. Her mouth twitched faintly. One man said he has seen women like me in port towns, and that we bring only bad endings. They laughed at that. Caleb felt he'd climbed the back of his neck. You'll hear worse, he said. Men out here talk to fill the empty space. The forest takes your voice if you let it. Does it take your heart too? She asked softly. Is that what happened to you? He stared at her, caught off guard. She held his gaze, unflinching. That's a bold question, he said finally. Many things have been taken from me, she replied. So I look at what is left in other people. I see how they guard it. Your eyes are quiet, like someone closed a door inside and decided not to open it again. He did not answer. He looked away toward the darkening window. Beyond it, the world shrank to silhouettes and pale snow. Rest, he said after a moment. You'll need your strength. When you can sit up longer, I'll bring you needle and cloth. See if you can earn Anders' mercy with straight seams. I have never begged for mercy, she said quietly. But I know how it's so. Her gaze softened slightly. Don't eat, Caleb North. You smell like horses and tired trees. A small, unexpected huff of amusement escaped him. Trees don't get tired, he said. Then it is just you. She murmured. He climbed down the ladder with her words following him like a faint warmth. In the cookhouse, he ate quickly. The stew tasted of salt and thin beef, the bread of old flour and smoke. Men talked, laughed, slapped each other's backs, made crude jokes. He let their noise wash over him, distant and unimportant. Later, as the camp settled and the lamps burned low, he lay in his bunk staring at the underside of the boards above. Above those boards, he knew, she lay staring at another set of shadows. The camp's rhythm shifted over the next days, subtly and slowly. Men found reasons to pass through the bunkhouse at odd hours, to glance up at the loft, to ask unnecessary questions. "Finch says she's mending," Eli told Caleb one evening, as if it were news. "He says she takes the willow bark like a soldier. Doesn't complain, just grits her teeth." There was admiration in his tone. Another man, Hartley, spat in the snow and muttered, "We're not a charity. Feed one stray, you'll have 10 trailing us by spring." Caleb ignored both words and looks as best he could. He did his work with his usual quiet focus, putting his back into the hardest runs, taking the worst trails without protest. He came back each evening to the loft, bringing small things: an extra hunk of bread, a scrap of cured meat, a stub of tallow candle to chase away the early dark. Nandi accepted these offerings with a calm that was neither gratitude nor expectation. She never begged, never clung. She simply existed with a kind of fierce dignity, even flat on her back with her leg bound in wood. Slowly, she began to talk more. She spoke of her home in fragments, in images. A river different from this one, wide and bright, with children diving from its banks. Women laughing as they ground grain on stone. Men singing in deep layered harmonies at dusk. "You sing here?" she asked one night, the candlelight etching her face in soft shadows. "Some men do," Caleb said. "Usually when they're drunk enough to forget how bad they sound." "In my home we sang for many things," she said. "For planting, for coming together, for leaving, for burying. It holds the pieces of you together when the world is trying to pull them apart." He thought of the quiet inside his own chest, of the door she had named. "I used to know a song or two," he said. "My mother tried to teach me. Farm songs, harvest songs. I left that behind when I came north." "The songs did not leave you," she said. "You just stopped reaching for them." He didn't answer. Instead, he listened to the wind whirring at the eaves and to the slow, steady in and out of her breath. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and comment what country you're watching from. See you in the next one.